Good morning, this is Real World News, which is a journalism program produced by the students here at QUT. My name is Josie Copley and this is Real World News. Our guest today is Dr Silvia Montana-Nino. Dr Silvia is a postdoctoral research fellow at QUT. She holds a PhD in digital media, an MA in politics and mass media, and a BA in journalism and social communications. Silvia is joining us today to share her insights from her current studies. Her work involves analysing how metrics and algorithms impact the production and consumption of journalism. Thank you for joining us today, Silvia.
Thanks, Josie, for the invitation.
So to start off with, I wanted to ask, through your analysis of metrics, how has this changed the idea of readership? Because it seems like it's gone from more of an abstract notion to quite a tangible one.
Yes, absolutely. So readership has changed with the use of real-time analytics tools in the newsrooms. So, for example, this means how digital news outlets use these tools to gather, to measure, and to understand audience preferences. And based on this information, the news outlets design and tailor this specific information for specific demographics across internet. So that means that the culture of readership is changing, because it not only means just to engage passively with the news, only like the time we spend reading the news, but also how resonant these news are like across social media platforms. For example, when news outlets share or distribute this news across social media platforms, people just put likes, just share the news, or just like connect emotionally with this information. This is like an information really useful for the organizations to capture the signals from audiences and of course, design this new content for these audiences on platforms. So the readership culture is changing, and also is changing the old historical premise of journalists that used to be that audiences never intervene in the editorial judgment. Now, of course, journalists have to receive this behavioral data and angle the news in order to just reach these different audiences across platforms.
It sounds like from that the readers seem to have a lot more power now than they sort of did traditionally. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, absolutely. This is how audience is more powerful these days, because based on this resonance, journalists like test and trial, and from trial and error just test this information to the audiences. So it's more powerful, and of course audiences are setting to a certain extent the news agenda in digital public sphere.
And how are these analytics gathered and used by different sorts of organizations?
Yes, this is very important, because organizations use in different ways the behavioral data from internet and social media platforms. For example, for commercial operations, this information is very useful, because based on this data, they design the marketing and advertising strategies to make their journalism more sustainable. Whereas, for example, for public service media, they use this information to see if they are actually reaching these audiences and also underrepresented audiences. So it's not only the mainstream audiences in this case, but also different demographics that are important to capture for the debates of a given public debate. So it is important for the public service organizations just to distribute information across these platforms for specific demographics present, for example, on Instagram, on Facebook, or even in Google. So they know what are the audiences present on those platforms, and they just need to design and package the stories according to these affordances in these different platforms.
So leading on from that, what do you see the future of journalism to look like?
Yes, it is important for journalists these days just to bridge between the different roles that the organizations have in the newsrooms. So for example, now in journalists you will find like more specialized roles There is the audience engagement editor and also the editor that sort of give the journalists like important information to understand metrics. Also, it is very important to understand more like the types of data the organization is using. So for example, there are like news workflows where you need to understand the data coming from audiences, the data that you need to just produce a story. So in the future, journalists will need to work based on these data-driven practices.
Do you think there's any particular ways journalism students and people graduating now looking for a career in journalism should be looking to sort of upskill or adapt? Are there particular skills that they really need to be successful going forward?
Yes, absolutely. More and more journalists will need to work with data. Mm-hmm. This is a reality, and this is actually part of the second stage of my research, because data is the main sort of capital these days for the organizations to work. So they need to be trained in understanding, for example, the origins of data, how to critically understand data and algorithms. You know that the platform algorithms have also commercial interests, so they need to scrutinize these algorithms in order just to be more critical, and of course to service the public need, the public interest journalism. So yes, in the future, journalists definitely will need to be trained on these uses of data types, and also understanding how algorithms are working.
It sounds like journalism is a sphere that's really rapidly changing. Do you think it's really important to have more research in journalism?
Yes, absolutely. This will imply to understand, for example, how artificial intelligence, how different processes of automation will be used by journalists. More and more, these technologies will be part of our work. And then journalists, human journalists, will definitely need to understand what is their place, what is their role, what are the skills that will be like more creative, because machines will do more automated work and replace like more repetitive tasks, whereas journalists will need to take power and understand these tools in order to be as central as they have historically been in the profession.
I think that's all we have time for, Silvia, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the invitation, Josie.
I'm Josie Copley, and this is Real World News. I'll see you next time.